All right, okay. Hi, my name's Laura Cohen. I'm the second year advisor of studies on the Horticulture with Plantsmanship course at the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh, and welcome to the open day. So today myself and my colleague Johanna are going to give you an overview of the botanics and the course, and then there'll be a chance for you to ask questions at the end of the course. So I'm now just going to hand you over to Johanna, who is going to take you through the history of the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh. Well, she's going to introduce herself first, so I'll hand you over to Johanna now.
Hiya, my name is Johanna. I'm the advisor of studies for first year or HNC Horticulture with Plantsmanship. And as Laura has mentioned, I'll be taking you through a quick whistle-stop tour of the history of the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh before handing back to Laura. So the Botanic Garden is celebrating a very special birthday this year, since it was founded 350 years ago in 1670. It's actually the second oldest botanic garden in Britain, with Oxford being the first, founded in 1621. And it was established by two Edinburgh doctors, Andrew Balfour and Robert Sibbald, who set up a physic garden really to cultivate medicinal herbs for medical practice. And teaching doctors about medicinal uses of plants was the focus. And the first garden was situated at St. Anne's Yard, which you can see here, which was just south of Holyrood Palace. And it was really to instruct medical students in plant identification. But it was a very small site, so fairly soon the garden moved in 1675 to Trinity Hospital, which is really today Waverley Station. And if you go into the station, there's a blue plaque that commemorates the site. So look out for it next time you're there. Again, it was a slightly larger, and in 1699 it was given royal status by William III. And also quite excitingly, we got our first greenhouse in 1714. But really increasing pollution, so this was in the centre of the old town, and problems with flooding meant that the gardens moved again. And in 1763 we moved to what is now Leith Walk, which is a sort of main central thoroughfare, heavily built up now. But back then, as you can see in this lovely little bird's eye view, it was really just outside of the city. So it was a much larger site, just over 6 acres, and as you can see, the three little buildings in front of the pond were actually the greenhouses, and it was quite sophisticated. It had 3 different climatic zones, and really this a fascinating period, because this was really when the physic garden started to become a botanic garden for the first time, and really changed its name then as well to a botanic garden. But once again, really quite quickly, the garden filled up. It was always a matter of having enough space for the plants. So the final move was to the current site at Inverleith in 1820. And this is really has seen the garden grow from 6 acres to what is now over 70 acres or 34 hectares. And the gardens also further expanded the glasshouse range, and the palm house, built in 1858, still remains the tallest in the UK. I think you can see a picture of it there. And then, if you could forward to the next slide, please, Laura. So the garden grew further over the next sort of 100 years, from sort of 1900s onwards. We managed to acquire our satellite gardens, and those are Benmore, Doig and Logan. And this really enables us to grow plants offering different climates, topographies and soils to that of Edinburgh. It's really quite remarkable. So Benmore in Argyll, for example, has a very wet and mild climate with ideal growing conditions for plants from Sino-Himalayan, as we call them, so China, Bhutan, And Benmore actually receives up to 3,000 millimeters of rain, which is 5 times that of Edinburgh. So really an amazing range of climates that we can have through that. Then there's Logan, which is in the far west, and that really has an extremely mild climate. It benefits from the Gulf Stream, and this is where we can grow tree ferns and warm temperate species, and plants particularly rich in Australasian, South African and South American plants. So plants we could only grow indoors in Edinburgh, we can happily grow outside at Logan. And then finally, Doig in the Scottish borders is probably our most continental sort of site with a harsh climate, with sort of very cold winters, but also warmer summers. And both Benmore and Doig also have fairly recently acquired what are called cryptogamic gardens, which are really for fungi, mosses and lichens. So these are the plants where the reproductive structures are not flowers, but actually cones. They're sort of spore producing plants. So, and part of the course is to visit these sites in second year, and hopefully you'll be able to visit them either by yourself or through the course. I'll now hand you back to Laura, who will be telling you a bit more about the current work that goes on at RBGE. But I will be there for the Q&A session at the end as well. So thank you. Hand you back to Laura.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Johanna, for a comprehensive history of the garden. So I'm going to just give you a wee overview of the garden and then some of a bit more detail about the education department and the HND course, the first and second year. So the mission of the garden is to explore, conserve and explain the world of plants for a better future. This is really developed from our very early beginnings of exploring plants and understanding them, and how much we rely on plants in our day-to-day lives, and you'll be coming to join us as students and getting involved in all of this. And we're incredibly lucky. We have a superb set of resources to help us do this, and so I'm just going to go through those first. So first off, we've got our living collections. So those of you who've been to the garden might be familiar with some of these, either in Edinburgh or one of the satellite gardens Johanna just talked about. So we've got 13,500 species across the 4 sites, representing, as Johanna has just explained, a huge diversity of plants across the world, including this rather fabulous alien-looking Strongylodon macrobotrytis, which you can see growing in the glasshouses in Edinburgh. So Johanna's given a super overview of the range of plants, indoors, outdoors, tropical, desert. It's great when we've really got the facilities to do that and help you get familiar with plants during your studies. As Johanna's already alluded to, we focus on certain areas which tie in with the climatic regions we have in our 4 gardens. So China, Arabia, Southeast Asia, America. This fabulous on the right, the tree is the Secotran dragon tree from Socotra. Where there's a lot of work in the past has gone on there, but we also have a lot of links with the Centre for Middle Eastern Plants. So we've got links all over the world, which I think is one of the great things as a student at the Botanics. If you've got a particular interest in an area of the world, we can find someone who you can speak to, and you could go on and do a summer placement there. You'll probably need to find the funding and stuff like that yourself, but we can certainly give you links in Turkey, New Zealand, China. We've had students doing placements all over the place. So we can certainly help develop any interest you've got already. So you might be interested in a particular area, but you might also say have an interest in a particular taxonomic group of plants. So the areas we specialise in are rhododendrons, Zingiberaceae. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's gingers, and we've got a lovely ginger flower here on the right. Gesneriaceae, so that's more familiar to you as things like African violet, St. Paulias that you might have as houseplants, and gymnosperms, so conifers. So we have the International Conifer Conservation Project is run and coordinated at RBGE with projects across the world, and seeds grown in the garden and sent out to safe sites across the UK and restored back to country of origin as well. So again, if you've got particular interest in a group of plants, we will be able to find someone who can help you explore that interest further. And there's opportunity to do little projects and assignments on groups or areas of plants in each of the 4 years. So again, you can delve during your studies as well. So as well as the living collections, we have the science division, and within that we've got major areas that we work on: our tropical diversity, looking at major floras, so helping people in different parts of the world to identify and describe the plants. We've got genetics and conservation, a lot of work going on there, because when you're restoring a habitat, it's really good to make sure that you have got a good genetic spread and it's not just lots of clones or very closely related plants that you're putting back out into the wild. So there's a lot of important work going on there. And cryptogamic plants and fungi, so that includes ferns as well in there. So again, lots of different areas that you can get involved in and explore. We have scientists, MSc students, PhD students, and a lot of volunteers who help do all of this work, and it is a world-class research institution for the science side of the botanics. Another big bit tied in with the science is the herbarium. So we've got over 2.5 million, I think it's actually 3 million specimens now, all the way from Darwin's to mine from an expedition I went to Albania on. And these are a permanent record and reference collection. So if somebody goes on an expedition, what they do is they collect some seed, and then maybe they'll try and collect a bit of the plant material, which they'll dry and press flat, and that will be kept in the herbarium. Some of the specimens are 100 years, over hundreds of years old, I should say, and they can be used for ongoing research. You can also look at where the plant was collected originally. Is it still found there? Has it moved because of climate change? Has it disappeared due to habitat loss? So it's a hugely important reference collection. You won't use it so much, particularly in first and second year. You'll get a chance to visit it, but you might use it a little bit more in third and fourth year, depending on what route you go down. But it's a great place to visit. So as well as the herbarium, we've got the library, and this is a cracking resource. So there's over 19,000 books from the 15th century onwards. Over 1,500 journal titles as well, many of which are horticultural journals, so you can find out about latest horticultural research and thinking. This is actually a reference library at the Botanics, so staff can't take books out either. So if you want to borrow a book, it'll hopefully still be on site somewhere. So you can't take books out, but you can come and use the library. Unfortunately, at the moment, the library is shut to staff and publics due to coronavirus, but hopefully that will be opening up soon, so people will be able to come back. So this is a great resource that you'll be able to use when you're a student at the Botanics, and many of the journals are also available electronically as well, which you can get through SRUC as well. So another big thing that goes on at the Botanics is we have a large public engagement department, so they'll arrange exhibitions, interpretations. When there's a fabulous flowering of the Amorphophallus here, this is Sadie, one of our senior horticulturalists, they arranged a whole suite of events around this, allowing people to come and see the plant, see it opening, videoing it as it heated up. We also have garden guides and lots of other events like the Science Festival, some cooking events that go on, all tied in with sustainability and teaching people about plants and horticulture. Obviously, a lot of these things are slightly on hold at the moment due to coronavirus, but they're looking at how they can start opening things like that up. So the biggie that you're really coming to the course for is the horticulture department, which has got over 70 staff across the 4 gardens. And again, Johannes touched on already, we've got some indoor departments, which we've got orchid collection, cycad, we've got ferns, we've got cacti, we've got tropical, so we've got a huge range of different habitats under glass. We've got the arboriculture team, and they look after all the trees in the garden, making sure they're safe and healthy. We've got the turf department, which look after the grass, which is the backdrop to the collection, really. So, and a great place for people to relax in. The rock and alpine department, which to my mind is one of the jewels of the botanics, with all the amazing delicate little rock garden and alpine flowers. Fabulous in spring if you get a chance to come and visit in spring, and as students you will get to see that in spring. And the herbaceous team, so this is where you'll see a lot of plants that might be quite familiar to you from gardens that you might have worked in or visited, but also some more unusual ones, I suspect. And one of the great things about the Horticulture with Plantsmanship course is you'll get a chance to work with hort staff from these different departments, particularly in first year during the work experience module, where you'll rotate around some of these departments. You might not get a chance to go to all of them, but you'll certainly get around a good number of them. So that's an overview of horticulture and how you'll have links with it. I'm next going to just tell you a little bit about the education department. So we've got a large education department with about 20 teaching staff, but we also get input from horticulturists, scientists and volunteers from across the garden. So you'll meet a huge range of people working and studying at the botanics when you come here. We teach all ranges from teddy bears picnics to PhDs. So we have primary and secondary programmes, the HND BSc programme that you're interested in, MSc, which is taught jointly with Edinburgh University, and then PhDs who are linked up with different departments. So it's really nice because you'll encounter lots of different people with different interests and make great connections that you can follow up through the rest of your life. Just to tell you about some other courses, we also have our own courses that we certify, so certificate courses, shorter ones, practical horticulture, and in the first year you'll cover quite a lot of what's covered in the RBGE certificate in practical horticulture. You'll do that in the horticultural practices module, but you'll also do extra things in that. We have a field botany course, and when you're in third year, you'll actually get a chance to do the RBGE certificate in field botany, which is a short 5-day course towards the end of third year, which gives you some really good field identification skills. We got a lot of courses in botanical illustration and herbology and some theory horticulture courses as well. So again, lots of other students around who you'll bump into and meet at different points in your studies. Slightly higher level, a lot of those courses you can continue on and do botanical illustration, garden design, and those students will quite often have a show garden at Gardening Scotland. We have garden history students, and Johanna's the key tutor on that course, as well as on the HND and BSc course. We have herbology, which is looking at plants and uses and making tinctures and remedies with them, and these are all taught as online and attended, and that's actually given us quite a lot of good skills for the shift to online learning that we've all had to very rapidly do in the last few months. So that's an overview of education, but I'm now going to focus in actually on the first year of the HND and the timetable. So this is a draft timetable for this year, and I will say it's likely to look a bit different just because of coronavirus and having to move things around, and some of it might be remote learning. We're still in the process of refining exactly what everything's going to look like. But if you're applying for 2021-22, which I think most of you are who are at this event today, this is probably much more what it'll look like. So you'll see the year is split between RBGE and SRUC. So the green sessions are where you're down at the Botanics, and the yellow sessions are when you're up at SRUC. So at SRUC, you do a lot of really key fundamental subjects that help you, give you the building blocks for understanding what's going on in horticulture. So things like soil management, so looking at pH, different soil types, and how to make the most out of your soil and look after it. Plant physiology, how do plants work, what's going on in them, and you know, as you learning all these things, you can relate them to what you're seeing in the plants you're working with on work experience or in horticultural practices, and what's working, what's not working. You'll also do horticultural mechanisation, which is looking at some of the machinery and how it works that you might use in horticulture. What's a good machine for different jobs? I'll come back to the graded unit at the end because that's a sort of final exam thing. You'll look at plant protection, so how to minimise or prevent pests and diseases from entering or attacking your plants. You'll do some IT. This is to make sure everyone can use Microsoft Office, different things like Excel and Word. So we want everyone to be at the same place. Plant growth and development. So again, looking at plants, how do they work? How do they develop? How do they grow? And what you learn in that you can tie into hort practices and work experiences, as I was saying before. Many of our students will go on to start their own gardening business, or perhaps decide they want to set up a nursery. So preparing to start a business can give you some of the good skills that you need for that, as will nursery production, looking at how to produce plants on scale, and some of the issues that are involved in that and the things you need to consider. And again, tying in with that retailing of plants, you know, what are the key considerations when you're selling plants? What are some of the barriers to selling plants? What are some of the considerations you need to take into account when you're selling plants and displaying them? And then last but not almost last, plant trials. This is a great little module where you're looking at how to conduct trials, you know, maybe a germination experiment or a cuttings experiment, and this will set you in good stead for a project that you'll be doing in second year, which I'll come back to. The other thing that you'll do right at the end of the year at SRUC is a graded unit exam, and this has questions that tie into 5 of the modules here. So it's an integrated exam where you're asked integrated questions about propagation or plant identification and use of plants. So that's an overview of the SRUC modules. At RBGE, you'll be doing work experience on a Tuesday, and that's rotating around those departments that I mentioned earlier. And you'll also be doing on a Friday morning horticultural practices, and that's in our teaching nursery in the teaching nursery classroom, and in space we have outside, where you'll be learning some of the key skills like taking cuttings, seed sowing, tree planting, bit of turf management. I've forgotten what else, but so you'll be getting some good key skills there, working with education and hort staff in that. And I will just say, sometimes people come on the course expecting this to be a full-on practical apprenticeship trainee course, and as you can see from this, there's really just the 2 sessions where you're doing hands-on practical horticulture. You will probably have some practicals in plant growth and development, and in plant trials is quite practical, but it's not the same as doing apprenticeship. So if you are thinking that you want to do a hands-on practical course, what I'd say is this is not the course for you at this point in your career, you probably maybe want to consider doing something like an NC, a National Certificate in Horticulture, which you could do with Elmwood or Oakridge. They're also SRUC colleges. Some historic gardens have traineeships and placements that you can go on. So you might want to consider doing some things like that first, or working for a gardening company or in a garden centre. And then you might decide now you're ready for some more in-depth study. So you'd want to come onto this course at that point once you've got some good experience under your belt. If you've already got quite a bit of experience and you're wanting to get more into the sort of whys and hows and wherefores of plants and horticulture, then this would be a good step for you doing this course now. So that's just a little bit about the kind of balance of practical and theory course, because it is a first year university course, so it is more on the theory side. One of the other things that you'll be doing at Botanics is plant recognition, and this is where you will be taught about plant nomenclature, a little bit of classification, not much in first year, and you'll also get weekly or every other week you'll be getting identification tests, where you'll be given some plants to learn, and then you'll be shown a sample of them and you'll have to correctly name them. So that's what that is, and this is great because it gives you a good chunk of, say, 200 plants under your belt, which if you're going off to start your own business, set up a nursery, you'll be already familiar with a really wide range of plants that are pretty common in horticulture, and a few slightly more unusual ones. So that's the first year timetable. I will say there's a question and answer session at the end, so we can bring these slides back if you do want to see one of these slides again. So this is the second year timetable. So as you can see, in second year, you're at the Botanics much more than you are at SRUC. So I'd say over the 4 years, if you do the whole degree, it's a roughly 50-50 split of time at each campus. So then very quickly, the SRUC modules, you've got soils and plant nutrition. So this is building on what you will have done in first year in the soils module. You then get into a little bit of genetics. So for those who might be interested in plant breeding, you might find this quite an interesting unit, but it's also just fascinating for how plants work, the nuts and bolts of what's going on. So genetics for plant science, you'll be doing some advanced plant propagation. And again, these are on the whole more theory-based courses because you're stepping up a gear into the second year. You'll also be doing data collection and handling methods, and this ties in quite nicely with some of the plant trial stuff you'll have done in first year, and it also gives you a really good grounding for a project that you'll be devising and running all of your own. So this is how to collect data, how to do some very basic statistics and understand what your data is telling you. There's also further plant protection, so this is looking at integrated approaches. So yes, you might need some chemicals, but how can you minimise it by using cultural controls and physical controls as well? So this takes plant protection a little bit further. At the Botanics, the units that you'll be doing, some of them actually run across the whole 3 terms. So you'll be looking at managing plant collections. So this is where you get a chance to work with in a small group. You're given an area of the garden and a project to revamp that area, doing it in consultation with key horticultural staff about what they want and what's doable in the time frame, and you're kind of left to get on with that yourself with some supervision. You'll also get a chance to look at the different collections and learn from the staff who look after those collections. So you'll have a couple of sessions with Andy Ensel, who looks after the fern collection, and he'll pass on his gems and his pearls of wisdom on what you need to do to successfully look after a fern collection. Or you'll be working maybe with Claire, who looks after some of the palms, and how she looks after them, what are the tips and tricks. And these are, if you do go on to work in a botanic garden, this is the sort of priceless information that you'll think back to and go, oh yes, I remember this is what I need to do with the palm collection at this time of year. So really excellent unit there. You'll also do designing plant collections, and that is looking at what are some of the key ideas in design, you know, creating flow through the garden, creating garden rooms. So this is giving you some of the key skills for going off and designing plant collections, which some of our students will go off and do, is set up their own business with a bit of garden design, or if you're working in a garden you might need to do a bit of redesign of it. So this will give you the ideas and concepts that you can draw on. You'll then also be doing something called plants, habitats, ecology and conservation. So this is looking at plants in their natural habitat, and if you can understand that, then you'll be able to replicate that much more easily when you're trying to grow them successfully for display or for conservation. And you'll also find out a little bit more about some of the threats to plants in terms of conservation, climate change, that kind of thing. A biggie that you'll be doing through the year is plant classification and systematics. So you'll be finding out how plants are related to one another, and you'll also be getting deep down into the structures of them. How are the flower parts arranged, and how are the flowers formed, so that you can really help to understand different key families of flowers, like what are the key features of Rosaceae, the rose family, or Leguminosae, the pea family, which will help you to identify plants, and it will just generally give you a better understanding of them when you're trying to learn plants. So that runs through the year, so you can get a good spread of plants at different seasons. We also have landscape design history. So this will give you the history of designed landscapes. So going right back to sort of Roman times through to modern, looking at who the key figures in designed landscapes. So people like Capability Brown and Humphrey Repton, and it will give you a really good understanding of where some of our landscapes came from, and especially if you go off to work in, say, a historic garden, you'll understand what some of the design features, where they might have come from, and how you can maintain them and keep them to show them to their best to the visitors to your garden. So that's Wednesdays. On Thursdays you'll also be doing plant ident. So this is every single week you'll be given 20 plants to identify. You'll have seen most of them on a walk round, but we put in a few mysteries from time to time. Again, this just helps to build up your knowledge of plants and the bank of plants that you can draw on and think about if you're doing designing or you're restoring a landscape. You've got a really good suite of plants in your head that you can use. So the graded unit project, this is actually sort of mostly free time in which you'll be able to come up with a topic of your own, a subject you're interested in, maybe plants from a geographical area or a plant family you're interested in, or maybe a growing technique. We've had students doing projects on mulches, on cuttings techniques, on rooting hormones, but we've also had students doing projects that are more design based, sort of designing a collection of roses for a particular site, or maybe interviewing people to find out about horticultural therapy. So you can really go for it and choose a project you're interested in. So again, this is where the data collection and handling methods module is actually a really good one, because it will give you some of the skills you'll need to put your graded unit project together. And graded unit 3 is an exam, much like the first year one. It's integrated questions that cover some of the key modules. So that's the second year timetable. And again, if you've got particular questions, we can flip back to this at the Q&A session at the end. There's one other thing that I need to tell you about, which is, so you'll get through SRUC, by doing the HND, you'll get a HND in Horticulture with Plantsmanship, which is awarded by SQA, the Scottish Qualifications Authority, probably rather infamous at the moment with all the exam stuff. But the Botanics also, to help you kind of get the most out of your time at the Botanics, we give you a few extra things to do. And these will then count towards, if you do just 1 year with us, either first year or second year, you'll get the RBGE certificate in Plantsmanship. But if you do both first and second year with us, you'll get the RBGE diploma in Plantsmanship. And so the extra things that you'll get is additional days of work experience around the garden. You'll get some study trips where you've got to do a wee revision sheet. And this is in first year, and that will actually set you up for a couple of the second year modules like the landscape design history and the plants, habitats, ecology and conservation. You'll be doing a plot in the garden, which I forgot to mention earlier, but I will come back to that in a bit. You'll be doing a plot, and we ask you to do a calendar for that, just to help plan it out, which will actually help you to do a really good plot. But it's just an extra thing that we ask you to do. And we'll give you a few extra, there's some key 75 plants that you do for the HNC in first year for the plant recognition, but we give you additional ident tests because we want you to really get the most out of the living collection that you can. In second year, we get you to do a report on the different botanic gardens that Johanna showed you, looking at what the different management issues are, what the purpose of each one is. So that's a short report that we'll ask you to do there. For plant classification systematics, we'll give you some extra support to help complete drawings of the flowers that you'll be looking at and dissecting. And then for your specialist project, you'll submit it for the SQA, but then if you would like to have it in the RBGE library, we'll give you some additional feedback, and you can then resubmit it with additional feedback for going into the RBGE library and potentially get a booster grade a little bit as well. So that's what these extra bits are that we ask you to do. And one thing that I will say is, if you've looked at the horticulture course, you'll notice that the timetable for horticulture with Plantsmanship is a bit more intense and a bit more full on, and it's partly because we've got these extra bits in there that we think it's really important for you to do and to get the most out of the facilities at the Botanics. And so some of the things will require you maybe to do a little bit extra study the weekends or in the evening as well. So sometimes the balance, if you're thinking of working working 1 day a week is doable, but much more than that, you might find you start to kind of burn out a little bit. But we'll see if somebody might ask a question about that, so I'll come back to it later. Just to show you some of the other facilities we've got at the garden, we've got the teaching lab, so this is where you can see all the students here with microscopes. We've got the teaching lab where you'll be dissecting plants and learning them and doing plant recognition tests. We have got the teaching nursery here, so this is a classroom you can get your hands dirty and do lots of practical work. We hear some students practicing grafting. And then the student plots, so I forgot to mention these tie in with horticultural practices, and each of you is given your own plot in the garden, and you'll be asked to grow certain plants for a third of it, peas, beans, lettuces, and then in the rest of it you can do whatever you like. So you might want to go more ornamental, you might want to carry on growing vegetables, or do a mixture. It's completely up to you what you decide to do there. And this is one of the highlights for many students, is working in the garden. You might have members of the public coming up and passing on their allotmenting gems from years of having an allotment. You'll also, we have an edible garden project that's based in the same area, so there'll be volunteers and staff there who you can share tips with as well. This is one of the things that will require a little bit of extra time, and so in the holidays, in the Easter holidays in particular, amongst yourselves, you might want to come up with a watering rota so that you can kind of still have an Easter holiday, but you make sure your plants are watered. But it's great doing that because you actually find out how thirsty, if you aren't used to growing plants, you'll find out how thirsty they are as they're growing over the Easter, unless of course it's a sodden Easter, but usually Easter's pretty decent over here. So that's the student plots, and I think that's me almost done. Did I? Oh yeah, I was just going to say, so if any of you've got any questions, please do ask them shortly. But if you would like, we're happy to have one-to-one chats to help you find out if this is the right course for you, if you're ready for it, should you get some more experience, is this a horticulture or the garden design course the right course? So we're happy to have these one-to-one chats with you. We can discuss specific or personal questions, but by all means do ask some at the moment, and we can sometimes give you a wee shot at a plant ident if you want to see how you get on with that. So I'm just going to quickly say, so we're going to have a question and answer session, so I think you can type in your questions, and Gemma is going to read out any questions that you have, and either myself or Johanna will answer them depending on who it's most appropriate to answer them. So I think over to Gemma for the Q&A session.
Yes, we've got a few questions in already. The first one is, will the timetable change because of coronavirus?
If you're starting in 2021/2022, so not this September but next September, it might be a bit more back to normal by that point, but obviously none of us really know. For this September, yeah, it will change. I think we'll still try and stick to the set days that we've got things on, but the order in which we teach things might shift around, so we're still working on that. And the Scottish Government guidance has literally just come out today on reopening of universities and colleges. So we're going to see, we haven't digested that to see how it'll impact, but yeah, it probably will. I don't know if Johanna, you got anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think but I think the first term we're looking at online delivery for this year.
Yeah.
But like Laura said, next year that we're hoping it will be back to the normal timetable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You've touched upon this already, but how much practical training is there on the course? I
don't know, Johanna, would you like to do this one? Should I bring the slide back up?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I just need to find it. I can't remember.
I think Laura explained it quite well. So we would say that predominantly the course is a theory-based course, and we usually recommend that students take a year out in year one or after year one. Sorry, I'll switch my camera back on. And we would say that a bit of previous practical experience is definitely beneficial. We think you get more out of the course if you bring a bit of practical experience. So like Laura said, so Tuesday is dedicated to work placement at the Botanic Gardens, which is obviously a key draw, and that you'll be rotating around 4 different departments. So you get to work with the Hort staff. Well, I think it's about 4 weeks each. And then Hort practices is a key one for really, but I would say it's an introduction to all the different sort of horticultural skills that you need. So, but it's quite in depth. So there's 3 sessions on vegetative propagation, just cuttings alone. Then you've got seed sowing, again 3 sessions dedicated to that, looking at seed collecting, seed dormancy mechanisms, how to break them, things like that. There's grafting, there's sessions on grafting. We've got turf management. We've got herbaceous borders, how you best split plants, things like that. But I would say, because gardening is very much a craft, and I think the more you do it, the confident you will get. And we always recommend that students take a summer placement or even a sort of, a one-year placement after year one. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. There's a question here from someone who during lockdown got really into gardening, and they'd not done a lot of it before, but they would like a career change from being an IT consultant. Is this the right step to go into a career in horticulture?
We often have career changes. I would say absolutely, but if you're wanting to work in a garden, we would definitely recommend getting a bit of practical experience first. I would say, I don't know, Laura, do you have anything to add to that?
I think what I'd add to that is if it's a career change from not having done very much gardening to this, I would say if you can do something like the NC, the National Certificate first. So if you can't find a placement or a traineeship somewhere, I think if you did something like the National Certificate in Horticulture, which again you can do with SRUC at Oakridge or Elmwood, and they're really hands-on courses, that will stand you in really good stead for then moving on to this. And often we get students who've done that first and then they'll come on to this because this is the next level up. So if you're considering applying next year, I don't know if they've still got spaces, they might still have spaces for doing something like that from now. So you could do that in this year and then start the HND in 2021, if that makes sense.
So yeah, there's plenty of time, I'd say, to get a bit of, and finding out whether that is the right thing for you as well. You know, you enjoy getting your hands dirty.
In all weathers, in the pouring rain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Would students be expected to do work outside of college hours, like evenings and weekends?
Can I leave this one for you, Johanna? Maybe?
Yeah. So
first your side of stuff.
We'd say it's a full-on course, and it very much depends on existing skill levels as well. So if you bring a bit of practical experience and a bit of plant knowledge, you will obviously find it a little bit easier. But things like the plot, most of that has to be done in your own time. So there will be a bit of weekend and evening work for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think certainly like any course, as a student, you will be needing to do assignments and essays in the evening and at weekends. So pretty much any course that you do will require you to do studying in the evenings and at weekends, you know, as you revise for an assessment the next day, or you finish off your essay for the assignment for preparing to start a business or whatever. You'll be busily working on a Tuesday night, no doubt, finishing it off. So yeah, there's the normal study that you do as a student, but then there's extra stuff like as Johanna says, the plot in particular. There's some timetable time, but most of it is at weekends. But to be honest, it's the bit that I think most students really enjoy, and actually you can't get enough of it. And I certainly remember when I was a student, you know, you're there, especially as the nights start getting longer in kind of like April and May. And you're there till it's dusk and you're kind of hardly able to see, and you're kind of still thinking, I'll just finish edging this bit or reading there. And it's quite addictive. It's nice therapy. So yeah.
Thank you. Is there any funding available to students so they don't have to work as much?
Yes.
Yeah. There's quite a lot through there's lots of horticultural grants and bursaries, and if you go to the RHS website or the Grow Careers website, you can find out what bursaries are available and how you can apply for them. And we often have students applying for them and getting, you know, maybe £500 here and £500 there, and it all just helps to add up and reduce, because quite a lot of our students might work for a few hours or maybe even up to 5 or 6 hours a week. But by getting a little bit of a burst rate might mean they can reduce their hours that they're working, so they can spend more time focusing on their studies and just generally not worrying about bills and stuff like that.
Perfect, thank you so much. How much time will be spent at the Botanic Gardens and how much at SRUC?
So in first year, you can see you're at the Botanics sort of like 2/5 of the time. You've got 2 full days at the Botanics in first year, and you have got some blank patches where you could come down to the Botanics, but you might also find those blank patches the time when you want to be up at SRUC studying and using the facilities up there to complete work for assignments up there. So in first year you're up at SRUC a little bit more, but if I bring up the second year timetable, in second year you're at RBGE a little bit more. So over the 2 years it's 50-50, but in first year it's SRUC more and in second year it's RBGE more. Hopefully that answers your question.
That's perfect, thank you so much. Is there any scholarships available for international students?
I don't know about that. Do you know, Johanna?
No,
I have
I'm afraid.
There might be. I think that's where, have a look on, I guess, the RHS and Grow Careers site, but I guess also maybe have a look on your own country websites from organisations in the country you're coming from. They might well have funding that will enable you to study abroad.
Thank you. When will the timetable be released for the upcoming semester?
I genuinely don't know. We're still working on it. I'm still finalising it, so it'll probably, hopefully, in the next few weeks. But as soon as we've got it, we'll be sending it out to students and whatnot. And if you're particularly interested in seeing what although my understanding is most of the people at this will be coming are looking at applying for 2021, so it should hopefully look like the timetables we've put up already. But if you're just curious to see, I'm sure there'd be a way we could maybe get it sent out to you once it's finalised. I don't know if that would be possible to send that out to you once we've got it finalised for semester 1. But yeah, we'll send it out to the students as soon as we've got it ready. Thank you.
Is this a good course if the person is interested in crop production?
That's a good question. I think maybe the SRUC course might be a bit more focused on crop production, or at least have more options where you can choose specific crop production modules. I think, either course will give you a really good understanding in plants and the diversity of plants and the key skills required to grow them and protect them, and you can apply that to any field. But if you know that you're really interested in crop production, I think the SRUC course, so in one thing I should say, so the Hort with Plantsmanship course in first and second year, you don't have any optional modules. All the modules are, by choosing the Hort with Plantsmanship course, you're choosing a suite of modules that have been selected already. If you choose the horticulture course, you've got optional modules that you can choose. And so if you know you're interested in crop production, you can then focus in on that and select the crop production related modules. So I think on balance, probably the SRUC module is more appropriate. Hope that helps you make a decision.
That's perfect, thank you. Someone's wondering if they're thinking of applying in 2021. Will the course be back to normal by then?
Yeah, I think that's a $60 million question that everyone's asking. Hopefully it will, but if not, we'll be making adjustments for teaching things online. So we're thinking of sending little kits out to students that they can do some practical work with in first year, but we're still again sort of finalising all the details of that, so time will tell, nobody knows.
Perfect, thank you. Someone here has some practical experience, but they don't know much about plant names and they're like, does this matter, or will they learn things like that?
Yeah, they'll totally learn all that kind of plant names and the sciencey side of stuff when they come on the course. So yeah, they'll get into the way of botanical names. Yeah, I don't think that should be a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then the last question is, are there any field trips that students will be going on?
Yeah, we have 4 study trips, which I think Laura went through as part of the RBGE certificate or diploma, to sort of different historic gardens, but we also do one botanizing trip to a specific trip, sort of triple SI, site of special scientific interest, and there'll be sort of short revisions on the trips. But it's also a chance for students to sort of get to know each other a bit more, and for us to get to know the students. So they're usually very enjoyable.
Yeah, and in second year we take you to the regional gardens, Benmore, Logan and Doik. So you'll get a chance to see them, and we'll try to take you to, because Glasgow, Dundee, St Andrews, they've all got botanic gardens as well, so we'll try and take you to one of them as well. So that ties in with the Botanic Gardens of Scotland report that you do, looking at the facilities and challenges faced by botanic gardens across Scotland, and comparing the collections as well. So yeah, so there's a few in each year. They're usually one-day trips, so rather than going on a week-long trip somewhere. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. That's all the questions we have today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Bye.